morning all. I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today and pay my respects to the elders, past and present. I'd also like to acknowledge any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people who are present with us today. With 30 June fast approaching, it was suggested that I touch on matters relevant for the year-end audit. But before I do that, as Brad mentioned at the start of today, I mean, how good is it to actually be out and about, to see people in person? It's been challenging from an audit perspective, auditing remotely. So it is really nice to be here in person today. Probably had a couple of things that were going through my mind prior to this morning. One was, would my suit still fit? I think a few people have probably had that thought over the last couple of months as people have started to head back into the office. And the second thing was, will the technology work? So I hedged my bets, brought my iPad, got my laptop, but obviously as it's turned out, the staff here at the Exhibition and Convention Centre have got the IT working correctly. But I will just start with touching on a couple of reflections. For those that didn't hear me speak in February, I pretty much assumed responsibility for the financial audit of the local government sector in February, so it's really only been sort of 4 months with feet under the desk, so to speak. A couple of reflections. Like other sectors that I've audited, over the years, we've got, some councils that are very stable. The executive team, the finance team is very stable, whilst others are undergoing significant change. Recruiting and retaining staff is a challenge that many councils face, given the flexible working arrangements now offered and or expected by individuals. I'm hearing that individuals can earn a city-based salary while working regionally. As an office, we've adopted hybrid working. We're providing flexibility to our staff. They can work from home 5 days a week. They can work from the office 5 days a week. They could work from your premises 5 days a week. But it's obviously provided that you're there and that you've got a meeting room and facilities for us. But, we are conscious that, we need to move, we need to adapt as a result of what the pandemic, forced upon us. And what we're seeing as an office is that even some of our audit service providers, and for many people that are in the room today, you'll be having your interaction with our audit service providers, if you like, rather than my in-house staff. Some of our audit service providers are actually moving to a 9-day fortnight. Again, as a part of their ability to recruit and retain staff. Capital program delivery is obviously being impacted. I think many councils are experiencing that at the moment. You're across the rising cost of supplies, shortage of resources, materials. And I'm hearing that in some instances, councils are putting out tenders for capital works and they're not receiving any submissions or any tenders. And that's because there's just too much work out there. VAGO receives a lot of incoming correspondence from members of the community regarding issues, relating to your activities and also to your financial information. That's probably the downside of being the sector director of local government, because I have to prepare the responses for the Auditor General. But what that does indicate to me is that there are users of your financial report and performance statement. So probably that's a nice little leeway into what we're going to cover off. Now let's see if I can get this thing working as intended. Okay, beautiful. So whilst the session is going to be mainly focusing on tips for year end and hopefully to make it a smooth process for you, I will touch on a couple of other matters. Okay, now this slide might look a little bit busy, but in essence it's merely summarising a council's annual financial reporting and performance statement requirements, which I'm sure you're all across. But for those that are new in the room, Obviously, a council is required to prepare a financial report and performance statement and to have it audited by the Auditor General's Office. The regulations are quite prescriptive regarding the content of your financial report and performance statement, even going down to the wording of your declaration pages. And that's certainly something that I haven't seen before, but something that I've got my head around in this first 4 months. The regulations obviously also bring into play the model accounts, which you're expected to sort of follow. As an office, we're required to provide a copy of the audit report to the, I was going to say, let's see if I can slide this along. No, maybe not. We're required to provide a copy of the audited accounts to not only the council but also to the Minister for Local Government. And I guess one of the changes under the Local Government Act 2020 is that there's just now a requirement to make sure that the council's had a meeting by no later than 31 October in a non-election year. In the past, there was a requirement to provide the Minister with your audited accounts by 30 September. Okay, now I decided to touch on the legislative requirements on the previous slide because in essence it sets the scene, it provides the clarity around what we are doing and why, and to me it allows us to think about how we will deliver the end product. It allows us to identify the pieces of the puzzle that must come together and at the right times in order to be successful. That clear understanding should allow any individual to move forward with their assigned task, hopefully with confidence and in an efficient and effective manner. Like at year end, there is pressure, timelines are tight, but if we have things well planned and we do it well and we do it once, then hopefully we can save some time. Now this slide is one that many of you may remember from my presentation back in February, and if not, well, I'm going to have another crack at it because I think this slide really identifies a number of the key pieces of the puzzle, and when they're all considered collectively as a part of your annual reporting process, it will hopefully result in a smooth year end. So I'll click on some of these a little bit quicker because some of you will have seen them. But in essence, like in terms of, start off with your project plan. Your project plan should identify, who are your key stakeholders, both internal and external. Make sure you've got milestones specified. They should be detailed. They should be realistic. Think about your required resources. Have you got enough staff to complete the task? Do you need to engage any experts? Have you got clear task allocation? And again, that just gets back to that role and accountability element. In terms of materiality, I think a lot of people think of materiality and they think that's external audit's issue, or that's external audit to set. As an office, we would really encourage the finance teams to set a materiality threshold. That can then allow you to, when you're preparing your accounts, reflect on whether or not certain disclosures are required. We often probably fall into the boat of let's just do what we did last year, but maybe there was something in last year's accounts that's actually it's not material, it's not required. So why spend time preparing that particular note? Why spend time responding to auditors' queries? So I guess just do encourage you to set a materiality threshold. We've got there, obviously, identify and resolve issues. So think about the need to prepare briefing papers for your audit committee and or to present to audit. Internal quality assurance, I'll touch on that shortly. Your information systems, be clear, where is the data coming from? Is it financial, is it non-financial? What controls have we got in place? Are we comfortable that it's complete? Is it accurate? And again, I'll touch on that with a later slide when I share some initial observations. Shell accounts, obviously if we do prepare shell accounts prior to balance date, it can really assist with the preparation of the draft accounts. Got that relationship with your systems. Should be that connection with your monthly management accounts. Throughout your month-end process, you'll hopefully be analysing movements. So once you get to year-end, It's very easy to explain those key movements. And obviously in this particular sector, because there is that need to be, explaining variances between budget and actual, obviously your budget, annual budget comes into play, or your revised sort of budget. On the next two slides, I've just listed a few matters that you might like to consider either later today or at the start of next week to give yourself the best chance for a smooth year end. A lot of questions just being posed here really. Do you have a project plan? Is it detailed? Does it cover all your bases? Assess whether you've got any risks to delivery at the moment, and if yes, what are your strategies to mitigate those risks? With your briefing papers, as I touched on, do you have any key accounting issues? Do you have any unusual transactions? Is there a need to prepare a briefing paper, provide it to your audit committee, and will that help them move through their process at year end to hopefully recommend that the accounts be adopted by council? COVID-19, there's many different elements to that. Obviously, some of the movements in your revenues and expenses or assets or liabilities will be COVID related and some won't. Again, at this stage, hopefully across what COVID's done to your day-to-day activities, and that can assist with you thinking about your financial report disclosures. On the next page, asset revaluations. This is obviously an area of interest for external audit on an annual basis, where you have got an independent reval underway. Please don't just pick up the valuer's report, pick up the figures, process your journals. Scrutinise those reports. Don't assume that it's complete and accurate. Reflect on the numbers. Ask yourself, do these numbers make sense? I know that councils, you might be a little bit competitive, but network. If you're Tony at Maroondah, maybe you chat to the CFO at Whitehorse. Similar geographical area. Oh, what's happened with your revals? Oh, ours have gone up by 28%. Oh, ours only went up by 3%. Like, just leverage off your network to help you be comfortable that what's in those reports makes sense. Government grants, probably the second bullet point is probably the key one today, and again I touched on this back in February, I think. With funding agreements, some will have recall provisions. For your material grants, really encourage you to reach out to your funding provider, seek clarification where you've got under delivery at balance date. Does that funding body expect you to still deliver, and therefore the recall provision's in place, so you'd have a liability? Or have they said, actually, you know what, you've been impacted by COVID, there's things outside of your control. We've moved on to the next financial year, we've got our funding for that, you can pretty much keep your unspent funds. They're the sort of questions that I'm going to be asking my auditors to be asking you, so it'd be great if you're on the front foot and have got some sort of correspondence back from your funding bodies. The next one around the preparation of shell accounts. I've started to see a number of in-house councils who've submitted shell accounts over the last month, and unfortunately there's a few on my to-do list to actually finish my review and provide the feedback. But it's really pleasing to see that. It's an opportunity to make sure that the changes that flowed through the local government model accounts for 21-22 have been picked up in your accounts for the current year. And again, I just emphasise those points. If there's a note in the model accounts that's not relevant, don't include it, delete it. If there's a disclosure that relates to an immaterial line item, have the courage and the confidence that you can delete it. Now, does anyone want to just shout out in terms of what you think 101 or the bread and butter might be implying on this particular page? Okay, we'll take the silences. It's over to you, Travis. You'll often hear of 101 accounting, 101 auditing. To me, bread and butter, it's the basics. What I've got on this slide is not information that's specific to a council, because obviously I'm about to go through my first cycle in terms of auditing your financial statements and performance statement. However, over the years, and unfortunately in more recent times, I sort of feel like preparers of accounts are moving away from what I call the basics. So I'm seeing many instances where the name of the agency, is inconsistent or incorrect when you go from page to page. There's adding errors, the spelling mistakes, the note references are incorrect, notes are either missing or not in a sequential order. Comparative information is missing or incorrect. You know, you get a particular set of accounts, there's some tables, and figures are cut off. So it gets us back to the presentation. And often we see the declaration pages not being provided to the auditors as a part of the draft. The declaration page is something that I always look at. We need to make sure that wording is spot on. Now, in your case, I probably shouldn't encounter too many issues because the regulations are quite specific in terms of what the wording is. But try and provide the full bundle and do like this little bit of housekeeping. Gets back to, if we do the basics right, do it once, it's going to save you time, eliminate the need for unnecessary queries. Probably what I would share with you is when I'm looking at a set of accounts, if I find all these what I call minor issues, I sit back and go, actually, what sort of quality assurance is being provided over this set of accounts? Is there a risk that some of these figures are actually incorrect? So I guess just keep that in your mind as you go forward. The next couple of slides, Tony, I will be able to sort of flick through reasonably quickly because I know that I'm sort of holding you back between getting to morning tea. But what I've tried to do is just at a really high level summarise a couple of points in relation to the financial report, performance statement and annual report. Now, back in February, I spoke about what were the key risks. To me, nothing's really evolved in that space. The intention of the slide before you today is to let you know of the areas, I guess, within your financial report. When I'm doing a page turn before I release the audit report, I'll be having a close look at what's in note number 1. Note number 1 is one of the items in the shell accounts for 21-22 that was overhauled. So please don't just pick up what you did last year. I really encourage you to look at the model accounts. Otherwise, there's going to be queries coming back. The explanation for variances, that's obviously in a couple of spots of your accounts. Government grants I've touched on. The next one, the restricted cash and investment balances. Again, for those that have had a close read of the regulations, you'll know that there is a requirement to specifically address a couple of things in your financial statements. And I'm interested in where you've got, where you are holding some funds that might be subject to a specific purpose, that connection between, I guess, your asset and your liability, which will often be your trust deposits, funds held in advance or whatever, there's actually a connection. So if we're going from note 5.1 to 5.3, the figures are aligned. We're not quoting different figures to create confusion. Obviously, the property, plant and equipment stuff's to do with reval, and the other ones are, will keep moving. In terms of the performance statement, I guess I'll leave you with a question. Like, does your annual reporting project plan consider your performance statement obligations? Or is it just something that you think about at year end? If we're thinking about this particular product just at year end, there's probably an increased risk that an error is going to be detected. Please give this the same level of importance, focus as you do with your financial report, because obviously it needs to be recommended to the council for it to be adopted. What I have shared there with you today is that we've actually identified a couple of councils this year, where as a part of our interim work, we've gone out, we've looked at some of the non-financial indicators and where's the data coming from in relation to your your December or your February reports. And we've actually, through inquiries, found that the information doesn't stack up. The figures are actually materially incorrect. It's resulted in a couple of issues being raised in our interim management letters. Now, whilst that's not ideal, I look at that as being that's actually good, because it gives people in the room today an opportunity to pause, reflect and go, okay, I'm in finance. Are we comfortable that the information coming from outside of the finance area is complete and accurate? So you do have an important role to play in this space. With the annual report, this one's really just a little bit of housekeeping. Again, hopefully your project plan with respect to your annual report touches on the need to provide your printer's proof to the auditors before you obviously publish your document. Again, I've seen a couple of instances through some of the incoming correspondence that the officers have received where there's been erratums needed in terms of what was previously published. And when I've looked at a couple of things, I've noticed that some of the disclosures in the assigned documents have been altered since the release of the audit report, and that sort of stuff shouldn't be occurring. I'm on the home stretch, Tony. 2 slides to go. In terms of parliamentary reports, I guess for today, I just wanted to let you know that there will be a results of audit report for 21-22. The content will be reasonably similar to what's been in the report previously. In terms of the tabling date, it's not going to be until after the state election, until the new government is sworn in. So at this stage, it's probably going to be a December, possibly even January, before it gets tabled. The annual plan, that obviously outlines our performance audit sort of program for the next couple of years, looking at tabling that over the next couple of weeks. We've gone through a consultation period with agencies that are likely to be in scope in a performance audit. So your organisation, if you are in scope, should already have some visibility. And I guess a performance audit report that we tabled in Parliament recently was the fraud control over local government grants. There was only, I think, 6 councils from memory in scope. So you might be thinking, oh, there's nothing there that I need to worry about. Well, the audit actually resulted in 9 recommendations that are intended to apply to all councils. So if it's not already on the Audit Committee's radar in terms of something that they should be considering, looking to get a briefing from management on, perhaps be prepared that there could be requests coming down the pipe. Lucky last, I guess as an office we've tried to get into a routine of hosting an Audit Committee Chairs Forum. We're sort of looking at about the 8th of July at this stage. I understand invitations will be sent out to the Audit Committee Chairs via email, just based on the contact details that we have on file. The next one in terms of, I guess, the audit service providers, and probably the majority of people who are in the room will maybe be interested in this, given that a large percentage of our audits are outsourced. We're going through a competitive tender process in relation to 22-23 and then the 23-24 sort of period. It'll be interesting to see what happens there in terms of, obviously, there'll be some changes in your auditors. There could be changes in audit fees. And not that I want to sort of touch on something that I haven't actually quite done yet in this first 4 months, but in relation to 21-22, there was a huge change in audit service providers following the previous, I guess, tender round that we went through. And the fees have jumped all over the place. Some are going up by 15-20%, some are coming down by 10%, some are roughly the same, and I guess I'm expecting that's going to happen again. I think to date I've got about 40 audit fee letters out the door. I signed another 20 this week, and then the remaining ones will hopefully be signed Monday, and then they'll be all out there. And lucky last, like as an office, we're always keen to be involved with activities that impact the sector. So I've just got there that I guess we know that financial sustainability indicators and what those indicators are showing can be a hot topic of conversation, and I guess I do acknowledge that sometimes maybe the definition that DTF might apply versus TCV versus Local Government Victoria versus MAB versus us might be slightly different. So I did actually have a meeting back at the start of April with officers from those different bodies that are mentioned there, and we spoke about the indebtedness ratio and the definition of own-sourced revenue, knowing that as the sector moves into this space of having the ability to access borrowings from TCV, there's that credit risk assessment process that needs to be undertaken. And I guess, I think I suspect most of the CFOs in this room would prefer to be judged using the same indicator, the same definition, rather than having different people have an indicator and it's all calculated differently. So today, I guess, just wanted to let you know that, we're happy to try and support different stakeholders having the same definition, and a lot of it seems to focus on what's included or excluded when it comes to own source revenue. So that was pretty much all that I was going to touch on. I could live on the edge and go a little bit risque by finishing with a joke, but perhaps I'll hand to Tony first and see where we go.
Well, if there's a couple of questions, otherwise Travis, are you around for the rest of the day? People can ask questions later if there's none at the moment. Question at the back. We've got a mic.
There's a question here.
Yeah.
Travis, question for you. Most of us in here are struggling with resourcing in terms of staff. Just wanted to know how you guys are set up in terms of your office, in terms of your staffing needs and that kind of stuff.
That's a good question, Charles, and I think it's fair to say that we're not much different to many of the chartered accounting firms. Finding resources is a challenge. We are pretty much in the market full-time with a number of recruitment firms looking to recruit what we would call our surge resources. In years gone by, or prior to the pandemic, I guess, we would always have a suite of, your sort of travelling backpackers from the UK, Ireland, Canada, New Zealand. And that was really handy. You get them on board for 3 months. That obviously has sort of dried up a little bit. So as we speak today, I know in terms of our in-house audits across the whole financial audit division, we're still looking for about 4 contractors to assist us. But it's an ongoing challenge. Thank you. So probably actually just to round out that conversation, I'll be looking just to have open conversations with CFOs. I guess I'm working backwards from 31 October. In order for a council to satisfy its legislative responsibilities in meeting and having a meeting during or by 31 October, that probably means that you need to have adopted your accounts at the meeting in September at the latest. I understand and probably acknowledge that maybe in the ideal world, a number of councils would like to have their accounts adopted, signed off in August to allow that meeting to occur in September, and then you can move on to your day-to-day work. I guess where that's not going to be feasible, possible, I'll just be looking to obviously have those conversations early. Our aim will still be to make sure that you can meet your legislative timeframes. Actually, that prompts me on one thing which I missed when I was looking at my slides. The last 2 years, obviously, many of us have done the audits remotely, and that actually creates an opportunity and a challenge. The challenge is, if we are working remotely and you're uploading information via a portal, you might be working hard, you're uploading all this information, and then you hear crickets for a week or 2 weeks. Similarly, you might have uploaded information to your portal and we might be working on it. But again, you haven't heard from us. So if I reflect on feedback that came through our staff survey results for 2021, there's an opportunity for both parties, I think, just to focus on that two-way communication. Because there can be situations where your intended activities for a particular week, they fall over. But of course, if information's been uploaded by a portal, well, maybe whilst we weren't going to come to your council until next week, whether that's in real life or virtually, actually another council's fallen over, we can actually work on your stuff now because you've uploaded it. So I guess what we need to do, and I'll be talking to my audit service providers, is just to have that open communication. So if you've uploaded something, let us know, and then if we're working on something for you, we should let you know, so that if there's that interchange of information, questions, queries, or similarly, if you uploaded stuff and we're not going to get there for 2 weeks, we let you know, so that you're not just sort of sitting there with a bit of a gulf of information.